It all started when I closed my eyes, the world around me fading away. I found myself standing in a vast, dimly lit room. Strange geometric objects were scattered across the space. There was a massive triangle, a perfectly formed cube, and a floating sphere. Each object seemed to hum with energy, like it was alive, waiting for something. The air was thick, charged with an indescribable feeling, and I knew this was no ordinary dream. The floor beneath me was smooth, reflective like glass, making everything feel like a distorted reflection of reality. As I walked toward the triangle, I noticed that its surface wasn't solid. It seemed to shift and bend in ways that defied physics. The edges were glowing faintly, each corner pulsing with a rhythm I could feel in my chest. There were no windows, no doors. The room stretched endlessly, as though it was both confined and infinite at once. I reached out my hand, hesitant but curious, to touch the surface of the triangle. The moment my fingers brushed against it, a sharp jolt ran through my body, and a low hum filled my ears. The room around me warped. The cube, once stationary, began to rotate slowly in place, its sharp edges reflecting light that didn't exist. I felt an intense pull toward it, like gravity itself was trying to drag me closer. It was almost as if the cube was beckoning me, urging me to come and uncover its mysteries. My heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't resist any longer. With one final step, I touched the smooth surface of the cube. In that moment, everything changed. The world around me fractured, splitting into 1,000 shards of color and light. When I touched the cube, and it showed my future, those were the words that echoed in my mind as I stood there, suspended in an infinite void. It wasn't just a dream. It felt like a moment of pure clarity, as though everything I'd ever wondered about life, the universe, and existence itself had been laid bare before me. But the vision wasn't comforting, it was unsettling. I saw flashes of places I'd never been, people I hadn't met, and a future that was both beautiful and terrifying. I could hear voices around me, the familiar hum of technology, the indistinct chatter of people I couldn't place. They seemed so distant, as if they were calling out to me from the other side of a thick glass wall. It was disorienting, but I couldn't focus on them yet. Something else was demanding my attention. The sphere began to move, levitating slowly in front of me. It was translucent, swirling with colors that shifted like liquid. The closer I got, the more I felt its pull. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew it wasn't just a simple dream. The sphere hummed, its energy building as if it were about to explode. As I reached out to touch it, I could feel something stirring within me, an overwhelming sense of awareness, as if the sphere was pulling the very essence of my being into another dimension. My surroundings dissolved, and I found myself standing in a completely different space. The familiar objects were gone, replaced by an endless landscape of swirling, vivid lights. I was no longer in the room I had first entered. Instead, I was somewhere else. I wasn't alone in this new place. Figures stood in the distance, their forms shimmering like silhouettes made of liquid light. Some seemed familiar, others completely alien. One figure in particular caught my eye. A woman with long silver hair and eyes that gleamed with knowledge beyond comprehension. She raised her hand, and I instinctively followed her gesture. Without a word, I began to move toward her, drawn by an unexplainable force. As I walked, the ground beneath me pulsed with energy, each step amplifying the strange hum that filled the air. The woman didn't speak when I approached her, but her presence was enough. She looked at me with a mix of curiosity and understanding, as though she knew exactly who I was and what I had come for. She raised her hand again, and a holographic map of the cosmos appeared in front of us. Stars, planets, and galaxies spun in a mesmerizing dance. She pointed to a small, unmarked spot on the map, and I felt a wave of recognition wash over me. This was the place I had seen in my vision, the future I had glimpsed through the cube. My mind raced. Was this real? Was I truly standing here, looking at a future that had yet to unfold? The woman seemed to sense my confusion, and with a soft, almost imperceptible smile, she spoke. "Time is not what it seems," she said, her voice like a whisper in my ear. "You are at the crossroads of what could be and what will be. The cube, the triangle, and the sphere. They are your guides." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, but I didn't fully understand them. What did it all mean? How could these objects show me my future? The space around us began to shift again, the stars on the map flickering as if they were alive. The woman's form started to fade, and I felt an increasing pressure in my chest. Panic started to set in as I realized I was losing her, and with her, any chance of understanding what was happening. But before she completely disappeared, she spoke one last time. "You must follow the path. You must trust the objects, trust what you have seen," and then she was gone, leaving me standing alone in the swirling void, the hum of the objects the only sound I could hear. I looked down at my hands, which were shaking. I didn't know what to do next, but instinctively, I began walking toward the swirling lights. The ground beneath me was shifting, like a river of energy pulling me forward. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I had to follow. Every step felt like a leap of faith, the unknown pulling me deeper into a reality that didn't quite make sense. The walls of this place began to form around me, like they were constructing themselves from thin air, but they were unlike any walls I had ever seen. The walls were made of liquid metal, their surfaces reflecting the vibrant lights around us. As I moved closer to one of them, I saw a figure emerge from within the metal. It was a man, dressed in a long coat, his face obscured by shadows. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate, almost as if he had been waiting for me. "You have entered a space beyond time," he said, his voice low and raspy. "But you are not alone in your quest. Others will come, and they will test you." His words filled me with dread, but also with a strange sense of purpose. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but before I could speak, he vanished into the metal wall, leaving only his words behind. I turned, searching for some kind of answer, but all I saw were the endless lights and shifting shapes. The air was thick with a sense of impending change, and I felt like I was teetering on the edge of something monumental. As I walked forward, the ground beneath me began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. It wasn't just the environment that was changing, something within me was shifting too. My mind raced with questions. Who was the woman I had seen? What did she mean by trust the objects? And who was the man in the coat? But before I could dwell on it too much, a new figure appeared in front of me. A tall, shadowy figure with glowing eyes. It didn't speak, but its presence filled the space with an oppressive weight. I knew instinctively that it wasn't a friend, but something far darker. As I stood frozen in place, the figure stepped forward, and with a flick of its hand, the space around me twisted into something unrecognizable. The world around me cracked like glass, and I found myself falling. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My body was weightless, tumbling through an endless abyss of darkness and light. And then, as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. I was back in the room with the objects, the cube, the triangle, and the sphere all unchanged, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. Something had shifted. The future I had seen, the strange encounters, they had all led me back here. And I knew this was only the beginning. I stood there, breathing heavily, trying to make sense of it all. The objects, the strange figures, the visions, they were all part of something larger, something I was only beginning to understand. But one thing was clear. This was not just a dream. I had seen something real, something important. And I would have to return to this place, face whatever challenges lay ahead, if I wanted to uncover the full truth of what was happening. The future was waiting, and I was ready to face it. The cube's surface gleamed with an unnatural light, and I felt a tug at the very core of my being. A voice echoed within my mind, but it wasn't my own. You have seen what awaits, but to truly understand, you must confront the truth. I looked around, trying to locate the source of the voice, but the room was as empty as before, save for the objects. The air felt denser, charged with the weight of unspoken secrets. I reached toward the cube again, this time with more resolve. Whatever it was trying to show me, I had to face it. As my fingers made contact with the smooth surface of the cube, the vision hit me like a tidal wave. I saw myself know, a version of myself standing in a different world. The landscape was bleak, a sky tinged with dark hues of red and purple. It was a reality that had been twisted, corrupted. My surroundings were unfamiliar, yet there was a strange sense of déjà vu. I could see the people I once knew, but they were different, changed. Their faces were twisted in fear, their eyes wide with the same dread I now felt deep within. "This is the future," a voice whispered, one that sounded strangely like my own, yet distant. "This is what happens if you do not act." I wanted to speak, to ask what I had to do, but my voice wouldn't come. I was trapped in the vision, watching helplessly as the world around me crumbled. A city lay in ruins, its buildings shattered, and the sky above was dark with an impending storm. In the distance, I saw the same cube I had touched, only now it was cracked, its once smooth surface marred by deep scars. The figure of the woman appeared again, this time standing in the ruined city. Her silver hair flowed like a river in the wind, and her eyes, those eyes stared directly at me. "You have seen the consequence of inaction," she said, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "The cube is not a tool for prediction. It is a catalyst. It reveals your choices. You must make the right one, or everything will be lost." Her words hit me like a blow to the chest, leaving me gasping for breath. What was she telling me? What was I supposed to do? I reached out, but the vision began to fade, slipping away like sand through my fingers. I felt the pressure building in my chest, panic setting in as the landscape around me crumbled. The woman's voice was the last thing I heard before everything went dark. "You must trust the path," she repeated, her words echoing in the void. And then, silence. The cube beneath my fingers disappeared, and I was left in darkness, alone and uncertain. Was it too late? Had I already made the wrong choice? I opened my eyes and found myself back in the room, standing before the cube. The strange hum that had filled the air was now gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. The other objects, the triangle and the sphere, were unchanged, their glow steady and constant. I felt a sudden urge to leave, to run from this place, but something held me there. The vision, the woman, the warning, they were all too real. I couldn't ignore them. I had to understand what was happening. I had to know why I had been shown that future. A figure stepped out from the shadows, one I hadn't seen before. It was a man, tall and imposing, his features sharp and angular. He didn't speak at first, but his presence was overwhelming, like a force of nature. He stared at me, his eyes piercing through the veil of uncertainty that clouded my mind. "You've seen the consequences," he said, his voice deep and authoritative. "But now, you must understand the power behind the objects. They are not mere relics of a forgotten past. They are keys, unlocking the door to your destiny." I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The weight of his words pressed down on me like a physical force, making it difficult to breathe. The cube, the triangle, the sphere, they were more than just strange shapes in a dream. They were something else, something far greater than I could comprehend. And the man knew it. The universe does not bend to fate, he continued. It bends to will, to choice, to the power of the mind. His eyes locked with mine, and for a moment, I saw something in them, a reflection of my own fear, my own uncertainty. The room seemed to pulse around us, as though it too was alive, responding to the energy in the air. The man's gaze never left mine. You have the power to change the course of your future, he said. But first, you must prove that you are ready. You must face the trials. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I didn't understand what he meant by trials, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't back down now. I had seen the future, and I wasn't going to let it unfold that way. As he spoke, the walls around us shifted, the liquid metal rippling like water disturbed by a stone. The air grew thick, charged with energy, and I felt a sudden pull toward the sphere. Its colors were shifting again, swirling in an intricate pattern that seemed to call to me. Without thinking, I stepped forward. As my hand reached out to touch it, a surge of energy flowed through me. The sphere seemed to absorb me, pulling me into its depths. And then, everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in the room with the objects. The space had changed. I was standing in a vast open field, the ground beneath me soft and uneven. The sky above was dark, clouds swirling in a constant, unnatural motion. The wind howled, carrying with it the scent of something unfamiliar, something wrong. In the distance, I saw figures moving, their forms barely visible in the shifting shadows. I wasn't alone, but where had I ended up? What was this place? The figures in the distance began to approach, their movements swift and deliberate. As they drew closer, I could see their faces hollow, expressionless, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They were not human, not like any creatures I had ever seen. They were something else entirely, and they were coming for me. Panic surged through me as I realized that I had been brought here for a reason. The trials had begun, and I was going to have to face whatever this place had in store for me. One of the figures stepped forward, its form shifting and distorting as if it were made of smoke. It raised a hand, and in an instant, a wave of energy surged toward me. I instinctively raised my arms to shield myself, but the energy passed right through me, leaving a chill in its wake. "You must prove yourself," the figure said, its voice a hollow whisper. "Only then will you be worthy of the knowledge you seek." The word sent a chill down my spine. What knowledge? What was I supposed to do? The world around me seemed to shift again, the ground beneath my feet rippling like water. The figures around me began to speak in unison, their voices echoing in my mind. "You must choose. You must decide who you will become." I didn't understand what they meant, but the words held a certain weight. I had been given a choice, but it wasn't clear what the consequences would be. The future, the vision I had seen, it was all leading me here, to this moment, and I had to make a choice. As the figures moved closer, their eyes glowing brighter, I felt the energy of the cube, the triangle, and the sphere coursing through me. I wasn't just dreaming anymore. I was in control. I had to be. The power that had been shown to me, the future I had glimpsed, it was mine to shape. But at what cost? The figures reached out, their hands cold and empty. I knew I had to face them, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. But the moment the first figure touched me, everything stopped. The world around us froze, the swirling clouds above hanging motionless in the sky. A voice filled my mind, soft but firm. "You are ready. The path is yours to follow, and just like that, the figures were gone, leaving me standing alone in the vast, empty field. I had passed the trial, but the future remained uncertain, and the path ahead was shrouded in mystery. One thing was clear. I was no longer the same person who had entered this place. Something had changed. Something within me had awakened. I blinked, but the field remained the same. The air was heavy with anticipation, as if something monumental was about to unfold. The power I had felt surging through me just moments ago was now a quiet hum, a constant reminder of the choices I had yet to make. My thoughts raced, trying to grasp the meaning of everything that had just happened. The figures, the trials, the warnings. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had only seen the beginning of something much larger. The weight of my future rested on my shoulders, but I was still unsure of what to do next. In the distance, a faint light flickered. It wasn't the strange glow of the figures, nor the eerie light that had surrounded the objects. This light was different, warm, inviting. I felt drawn to it, as though it were calling me, urging me forward. Despite the uncertainty that clouded my mind, I stepped toward the light. Each step felt heavier than the last, the ground beneath me sinking slightly with every movement. I could feel the weight of my decisions pressing down, yet the light promised something more, something that could help me understand the path I had to take. As I approached, the light grew brighter, revealing a figure standing in its center. It was a man, tall and regal, his features sharp and defined. His hair was silver, flowing like liquid metal in the breeze, and his eyes, those eyes were filled with a knowing, a deep understanding that made me feel small and insignificant. He looked at me with a quiet intensity, as though he had been expecting me. "You've come far," he said, his voice resonating in the space around us. "But the true journey has only just begun." His words were both a comfort and a challenge. I felt a rush of emotions, confusion, fear, and curiosity swirling inside me. This man, whoever he was, held the answers to the questions I had been asking since I first touched the cube. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "What am I supposed to do?" The man smiled faintly, as though my questions were not new to him. "This is the nexus of all possibilities," he replied. "Every choice, every action, every path you could take has led you here. But the path you choose from here will shape your destiny." The words hung in the air, but their meaning was elusive. The nexus of possibilities? What did that even mean? I had already seen the future, no. A future, and it was a future I couldn't let happen. But how could I change it? How could I break free from the cycle of inevitability? The man seemed to sense my thoughts, his gaze piercing through me. "The future is not set," he said, as if reading my mind. "It is shaped by your will, by the choices you make. But be warned, every decision has consequences." The air around us began to hum again, the energy from the cube, the triangle, and the sphere reawakening. The man raised his hand, and before me, the ground shifted, revealing 3 paths, each one glowing faintly. One path was shrouded in mist, its end hidden from view. Another was lined with sharp, jagged rocks, the air around it crackling with tension. The third path seemed calm, peaceful, the sky above clear and serene. But something in my gut told me that it wasn't as simple as it seemed. "Choose," the man said, his voice steady and calm. "Your journey will be defined by your decision." I stared at the 3 paths, each one offering something different, yet equally uncertain. The misted path beckoned with its promise of hidden truths, the jagged path with the challenge of overcoming obstacles, and the serene path with its calm exterior, hiding its own dangers. Which one would lead me to the truth? Which one would allow me to change the future I had seen? My hand hovered over the path, but before I could make a choice, The man spoke again. "You're not alone in this decision," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Your choices will impact more than just you." I froze. The weight of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't just my future. The people I had seen in the vision, the ruined city, they were part of this. My decisions would affect them too. I wasn't just facing a trial for my own sake. I was standing at a crossroads that would determine the fate of everyone. The gravity of the moment threatened to overwhelm me, but I took a deep breath, grounding myself. I had to choose. There was no turning back now. As I took my first step toward the misted path, the ground beneath me rumbled, and the figure in the light raised his hand. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. The mist may hide answers, but it also hides dangers. Many have chosen this path, only to lose themselves in the fog. I hesitated, feeling the pull of uncertainty. The jagged path seemed dangerous, but it offered a challenge I could face. The serene path, though tempting, felt too easy to passive. I had to choose the one that would lead me to the truth, no matter the cost. "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady. "I have to know what lies ahead." And with that, I stepped forward, the mist enveloping me almost immediately. The world around me shifted, the air growing thick and heavy as I walked deeper into the fog. The light from the figure behind me faded, leaving me in darkness, the only sound the soft crunch of my footsteps on the ground. The path seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning with no end in sight. I had no idea what lay ahead, but I had made my choice. I was ready to face whatever came next. The mist seemed to come alive, swirling around me, obscuring my vision. I could barely see the path ahead, but I pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant echoes of something moving in the fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, that something or someone was watching me. My heart pounded in my chest, but I refused to turn back. The future was waiting for me, and I wasn't about to let fear stop me from reaching it. As I moved forward, the mist began to thin, revealing glimpses of a new world. The landscape before me was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was a city, but not like any city I knew. The buildings were towering structures, made of materials that seemed to shift and change with every step I took. The sky above was a deep shade of purple, streaked with lines of glowing light. The air hummed with energy, and I could feel the pull of something greater, something powerful. I had reached the heart of the Nexus, and the answers I sought were within my grasp. "Welcome," a voice said, one that was both familiar and foreign. I turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a woman dressed in flowing robes that shimmered with light. Her eyes, though kind, held a deep sadness, as though she had seen the weight of the world and had carried it for far too long. "You have come to the heart of the Nexus," she said, her voice soft yet filled with an unspoken power. "And now, you must face the final trial." My heart raced as I realized what she meant. This wasn't over. The true test was yet to come. And after that, I woke up startled and in a cold sweat in my bed. "Doctor,"